that are required by law to reveal that information to eavesdroppers and governments worldwide. So what's the difference?
You can leave your cell phone at home.
You can leave your cell phone at home, but you probably don't.
It's not mandatory.
It's not mandatory. Right. Right. Choice. This is the difference. You choose to carry a cell phone, whereas you would be forced to carry a tracking device. Well, I have a mobile phone. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would have a mobile phone. Why would I want one? It's a mobile tracking device. It communicates over an insecure protocol. It's potentially a mobile bug. And yet, I have one. So did I choose to have a mobile phone? Maybe. I think if you look at the way that people tend to organize in groups and communities, they're often sort of informal communications networks that bind them together, that allow them to communicate, make plans, coordinate activities. And that if you introduced sort of something like the GSM cellular network to this group, and if I start using it, I am subject to something that's very well known called the no network effect. Right, where if I'm the only one with a cell phone, it's really not worth very much. That the value of a network is in the number of people that are connected to it. And that if I'm the only one, I can't really communicate with anyone. However, if I somehow manage to get everyone to start using my communications network, it becomes very effective and very valuable. But there's an interesting side effect, which is that the old informal mechanisms that people use to communicate, to collaborate, disappear. That they are destroyed by the introduction of technology. The technology actually changes the social fabric of how people communicate and coordinate. I mean, mobile phones, there are many obvious sort of, mini examples, right? People used to make plans, right? They would say, I'll meet you on this street corner at this time, on this day, and, we'll do something. And now people say, I'll call you when I'm getting off work. Or I'll text you. And if you don't have a mobile phone, you can't really participate in this type of organization. And so you begin to find yourself kind of alone. Because if I now make the choice not to be a part of this cellular network, there's sort of an interesting thing where, once again, I'm subjected to the no network effect. Because the network that used to exist, these informal communications channels, have been destroyed. So, yes, I made a choice to have a mobile phone. But what kind of choice did I make? And I think that this is sort of an interesting phenomenon, where what happens is a choice is introduced. And it starts as a very simple choice, the choice of whether or not to have a mobile phone, a simple piece of technology. But slowly, things happen to expand the scope of that choice, until eventually it's so big as to encompass not just whether you have a mobile phone or not, but whether or not you want to be a part of society. Then in some ways, the choice to have a mobile phone today has become not necessarily just whether you have a piece of consumer electronics in your pocket, but whether or not you are even a part of society. And that's a much bigger choice, and maybe not one that we should have to make, or at least not one that's really a choice at all. So I think this pattern of small choices becoming big choices is actually everywhere once you start to look at it. And all right, so my most favorite recent example is with this Firefox add-on called AdBlock Plus. Are people familiar with this? It's very popular, right? It allows you to block ads. And so the way this works is by defining a list of regular expressions which specify URLs that you would like to block. And the idea is, with regular expressions, you can probably target most of the URLs that will be serving ads. The problem is that these URLs are sort of constantly changing, that the ad networks are introducing new things, and so you want to be updating and maintaining this list of things that you're going to block. And so not everyone wants to sort of keep on this game, and so what AdBlock Plus has done is give you this system of subscriptions, where you can subscribe to a list that someone else maintains of URLs that are likely ads. And so there's a few popular lists, and then there's also a few popular lists for blocking trackers. So these are things like web bugs and stuff that are tracking your movements around the internet. And so I am subscribed to a list that updates the URLs for the trackers that I would like to block. And one day, and so of course one of the major things in this list that I was interested in blocking is Google Analytics. Because, what is worse than what Google is already doing than Google Analytics? I mean, they're monitoring your movements on the internet even when you're not participating in their services. And so one day, Google Analytics disappeared from my subscription list. If you think about the old way, sort of the old world, you imagine that there was some Google executive who, found the maintainer of this list and, showed up with a briefcase full of cash, and they shook hands, and, they, had this backroom deal, and convinced the guy who's maintaining this list to remove Google Analytics. But as far as I can tell, that's actually not what happened. Google Analytics works via JavaScript, where if you want to be tracking the people that visit your website, you import a little bit of JavaScript from a URL that Google hosts, and automatically the statistics are accrued. And what Google started doing was saying, all right, you're importing this JavaScript, and as long as you're importing it, here are a few sort of just useful JavaScript functions that many people will probably want just to make their website work. That just, if they're going to employ some JavaScript in their website, we'll just put some useful functions in our JavaScript thing that you're already importing, which you can then use for the actual functionality of your website. Sort of a convenience thing, and they were going to do it right and all this stuff, right? But so this is very interesting, because what they've done is expand the scope of the choice that you have to make. Because now, if you block Google Analytics, you're not just stopping the statistics from accruing, you're actually breaking the functionality of the website. Because now the website doesn't have these JavaScript functions that it uses for its core functionality. And so what happened was the person who was maintaining this list had to remove Google Analytics, because to block it was actually breaking websites. And so this is diabolically clever on behalf of Google, right? Because what they've done is expand the scope of the choice you have to make from not just whether or not you want to participate in the statistics accumulation of Google Analytics, but whether or not you want to use the website at all. If you don't participate in Google Analytics, you can't use the website anymore. If you want to use the website, you have to participate in Google Analytics. So, why is this significant for us? Well, this man's name is John Poindexter. He is incidentally the person who was found to be mostly responsible for the Iran-Contra scandal. He was convicted of lying to Congress, but of course never went to jail. In 2002, he introduced a government program called Total Information Awareness, and in the United States. And he gave a speech when he was introducing this program, and he says, "Data must be made available in large-scale repositories with enhanced semantic content for easy analysis." What he was proposing is that this government program would just store all email traffic, all web traffic, all credit card history, everyone's medical records. They would collect all of this without worrying about analyzing it in real time or pulling information out to figure out what was going on, but just dumping it all into one large sink. And then they would develop the technology or the algorithms to really efficiently mine data out of this big pile to build the profiles and generate the statistics on relationships that they might later want. And so this was sort of the totalitarian future. It was the cypherpunk nightmare, right? It was what they had been preparing for, what they had imagined that we were going to get, and why they were so interested in promoting cryptography in the first place. But when John Poindexter announced this program, people freaked out. I mean, looks totally scary, right? It's pretty bad. Even Congress was sort of like, whoa, what's going on here? So the program was actually stamped out. It was canceled. Well, so why did people freak out? First of all, they're doing this all wrong. They're clearly from sort of the old world, right? They don't understand how things work today. This was their actual program logo. This isn't like The Onion came up with something, whatever. This is what they chose. They have the eye of God on the pyramid, conjuring all this Masonic shit with a beam of light shining down on the earth itself. That bit of Latin under there means knowledge is power. These guys are, they clearly don't understand how this works. If you're going to start like a scary government program like this, you really need like a friend